Going into this project, I had some mixed emotions. Now, on one hand, I was super excited, but as the days started to get closer to the actual release date, I had some anxiety because the expectations for this project were through the roof. I mean, it's the first time Snoop and Dre collab for a full-length release since 93. What is good, y'all? It's your boy Mixtape Moth. If you are rocking with this content, go ahead and smash that like button for your boy. Hitting the like button is greatly appreciated. Also, subscribe if you haven't. But today, I'm going to hit y'all with my thoughts on this new project from Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre entitled Missionary. We get the return of two West Coast rap titans, the dynamic duo of Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. I mean, what more could possibly be said about these iconic California rap legends and pioneers? Dre, of course, is the sonic genius, the Quincy Jones of hip hop, and Snoop has one of the most recognized voices and illest flows in this hip hop game. Now, this project Missionary was announced back in 2022 when Snoop repurchased Death Row, and it's been one of the most highly anticipated drops ever since. Getting right into Missionary, it's not technically a sequel to Doggy Style, but I can see why some would go into this project expecting it to sound like Doggy Style too. I really do. But this project contains 16 songs lasting approximately 46 minutes. Now, all songs were produced by Dre, but he did bring along some friends for the ride. Some of the following share production duties with him. You have the ICU, Sam Sneed, Dem Joints, Bug the Beats, FNZ, Focus, Fred Wreck, and Mel Beats. But with that being said, let me go ahead and just hit y'all with that track-by-track breakdown. The opener, Foreplay, really sets the tone with some gorgeous sung vocals from BJ, the Chicago Kid, repurposing that classic stylistics, people make the world go round, but here, instead, it is Snoop Dogg who makes the world go round. Anytime I hear this melody, I instantly think of that scene in the Crooklyn movie, but this is a dope, soulful, luxurious opener to set it off. Track 2, Shangri-La, is a highlight that has the same sample De La Soul used on Stakes is High, a sample that you just can't go wrong with. And I was pleased to see Sam Sneed's name listed in the production credits as well. So Snoop does have some of his wittier, more braggadocio lines on this track, one being dudes swear they high, but look up and see my trajectory. Yeah, this is a short record, but a dope one. This one of my favorites. Track 3, Out of the Blue, which was the second single, is another standout moment on this project. It's a back and forth banger built around a few samples, one being Schoolie D's Saturday Night and the other Mia's Paper Planes. But this is a fly banger where you can just hear their back and forth chemistry still being sharp as attack. Snoop is really flowing like water on this record, having fun with it. And Dre had the noteworthy lines. Still Dre, still on top, still got it. The Sonic is still iconic. They still sniffing the product. Yeah, for most folks, Out the Blue will be one of their favorite tracks, I would imagine. I mean, it's just a fun, fly track that does recapture some of their early nostalgia without the G-Funk, that is. Next is Hard Knocks, which has a beat shift. Now, the first has a heavy drum and bass presence and some of Dre's signature bells. Initially, I couldn't really get into the first beat, but it has grown on me with repeated listens. But the second instrumental has a very dope trombone flip, and this is just one of the better instrumental change-ups on the project. Now, on this track, you also have an interpolation of Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall with the kids chanting on the chorus, which wasn't bad. Following this is Gorgeous, the first single, and it's a sleek, textured G-Funk bop, sampling the well-known Gap Band single. Janae Aku has some lush, sparkling vocals as well. But yeah, this is the most G-Funk sounding on the whole thing. It's one for the grown and sexy. A silky smooth feel-good track that you just can't really hate on. And there is the experimental Last Dance with Mary Jane featuring Jelly Roll. Now, this does sample Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers' Last Dance, but it has a different guitar riff. However, that harmonica is still the same. So to keep it a buck, I didn't expect to enjoy this going into the project, but it ended up not being bad at all. Sure, I totally could have done without the Jelly Roll feature. I mean, Jelly Roll is super commercial and I didn't need him on this, but it was a fitting sample for Snoop's first love, which is Mary Jane. This is the kind of track that did put me in the frame of mind of when RZA went super experimental and collabed with the Beatles and also with that one track, Preacher's Daughter from A Better Tomorrow. If you know the vibes I'm talking about. Right after is the banger Thank You, which will likely give you those late 90s, early 2000s vibes. Snoop is flowing marvelously, really rapping with some high energy vocals, just going in, giving himself some flowers with bars like, now 6 million ways to get it, choose one. Snoop Dogg, look how I did it, hell of a run. There's also the really well known Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself sample, which I think works here, even though it is super well known. Yeah, I can honestly see Thank You being one of the favorites for many. And there is Pressure with K.A.A.N, or excuse me if I'm pronouncing that wrong, K.A.A.N or K.A.A.N, who does appear a lot on this project. This is a short, funky track with a rubbery bass line, and K.A.A.N did provide a solid hook, helping to give the track that 70s funk band energy. And Snoop was rapping with a slick Rick-like flow, which I thought was cool. Overall, a smooth, playful, Mac-ish song at the end of the day, but quirky at the same time. Then there's the third single, Another Part of Me with Sting, which initially, as a lone single, I did not care for at all. However, with more listens, it surprisingly grew on me. So I did enjoy the Police sample. It kind of channels this big rock festival vibe. I mean, I think that's what they're aiming for here. But I will say that Snoop's auto-tune vocals were not the greatest addition to this album. That being said, I will say that this track did sound much better in the context of the album than as the third single. But right after is one of my favorite, Skyscrapers with Method Man and Smitty. Now this record definitely channels more boom bap, and I love the piercing celebratory horns. They're also very cinematic, and Sam Sneed was listed as a production credit. But on the lyrical front, the highlight was Method Man, who really bodied his feature. It's something that Method Man has really done the past couple of years, in all honesty, but we really need that album from Meth. Whether it's the one produced by Havoc or whoever is doing it, we need that album. Afterwards is Fire, which had production credits from Focus and Fred Rack. Now this is a song that I would consider to be one of the weaker links for me, but sure, I'll probably require more listens, but overall I'm just on the fence with it. We get this reggae meets pop like refrain from Coco Sarai, who does appear quite a bit on this project, but I will say that Snoop did give us a solid performance lyrically. He was kind of going in. Sonically, I don't know if I love this record though. Immediately after is Guns and Smoke featuring 50 and M, so as a result, it will be one of the most sought after. This does sample from 3 Biggie tracks as well as an eerie soul sample, so it was a dope enough backdrop for the 3 to do some slower, more menacing flows. 50's performance was not bad, and it did sound a lot better than when he was featured on the Nas album, but he was still the rustiest vocally out of the 3. Eminem came through with a long-ass verse, but I have to say it was dope. I haven't loved Eminem's cadence in a minute, but he didn't do a bad job here. I would say Snoop was my favorite vocally though. So Guns and Smoke, a dope enough track, but I don't know if it elicits the fireworks that some may have wanted. Right after is Sticky Situation featuring K.A.A.N and Coco Sarai, and it's one of the high points. I mean, you have a flawless beat shift. The first has the Isaac Hayes sample, most commonly used by Public Enemy, but Be Real and Scarface later on. But I'd have to give it up to Coco Sarai, who did give her best performance on the album. It was that second beat shift, which was going into more G-Funk territory. I mean, this was fire sonically. One of the best songs that will, in fact, harken back to earlier Snoop. Following this is Now or Never featuring Dr. Dre and BJ, the Chicago Kid. Now, the slower, soulful production was reminiscent to something we could have gotten towards the end of that Compton album from Dre. But this is a really beautiful track where Dre and Snoop reflect on their legacy. Snoop had the dope lines, a hood dude to Hollywood, I must have had a sixth sense. I turned into the dude I'm supposed to be. See walking on that Nipsey blue upholstery. Thank you to the DOC that opened up the door for me. Second to last track, Gangsta Pose, experiments with different production styles, but as a whole, it's definitely more modern and up-tempo. It might not be for everyone, but Snoop is gliding over both beats. But thankfully, this project ends on a very strong note with The Negotiator, one of my favorite tracks that has that classic minimalist soul riff. I mean, this is the kind of soul backdrop that you could just ride out to, really giving those strong 70s blaxploitation vibes. And Snoop is doing a victory lap, acknowledging that it's been one hell of a ride, and I could have envisioned Dre on this beat as well. So overall, I'm gonna give this project a rating of a 4 to a solid 4 mics. Yeah, personally, I don't think this project would get lower than a 4 after giving it 3 to 4 listens. Now, it still might not be what you really wanted or expected from these two in 2024, but I do think if you kept an open mind and you gave it more than one listen, you gave it more than one listen, then I think you could acknowledge that it was still a well put together, well produced project. Sure, I would have personally loved if there was just a bit more of a G-Funk presence on this project. I'm not gonna hold you. I mean, just imagine if Snoop and Dre tried to cook up a 2024 version of the Shiznit, if that's even possible. But still, I think a lot of us would have loved if they tried it. But the reality is that's clearly not the vibe they were going for here. My response to folks who wanted more G-Funk, I would tell them to check out that Dog Pound and Eastsiders project from Death Row in 2024 if they already haven't. Look, even if you didn't really care for the direction that Dre and his guests went into on the production front, I think you would still have to acknowledge that this is the best Snoop has sounded in a long time. I mean, Snoop, for me, was probably the MVP of this project. I mean, it's like he tapped into that lyrical fountain of youth. And I also did enjoy seeing producers like Fred Reck and Sam Sneed getting some love in the production credits. Now, as far as the best feature, I would have to give that to Method Man. But overall, Dre and Snoop on this, they took some experimental risks for sure. Some worked out more than others. But I still think this is a good album that's probably comparable in quality to Dre's 2015 Compton project. So to wrap this up, if you went into this album expecting a Doggy Style Part 2, then you will be highly disappointed for sure. But I don't really know if that was fair to expect from these two, given everything. I will say though, whatever the new sound they created for this new project, it ended up capturing my attention and piquing my interest a little more than some other projects that people praised a lot this year. My favorite tracks include Foreplay, Shangri-La, Out the Blue, Gorgeous, Thank You, Pressure, Another Part of Me. Yeah, Another Part of Me ended up making it. Skyscraper, Sticky Situation, Now or Never, and The Negotiator. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section. It's your boy Mixtape Mob. I am signing out. As always, is peace and blessings. Snoop Dogg, Dr. J, Missionary.